Okay, let's just jump right into this. We are exploring an absolutely spine-chilling story today from the dark halls of an old civil hospital. It's this wild explainer where a very real, very terrifying medical emergency literally collides with supernatural lore. Seriously, grab a seat because this one is intense. Let's dive in. So picture this. You've got this old hospital sitting on the outskirts of the city, right? It looks almost like some abandoned fortress in the dark. And it's a night where the rain isn't just falling, it's pouring down. Inside, up on the third floor, you'll find ward number 9. Now, there is a whispered rule here, a really dark legend, honestly, that anyone admitted to the ICU between 2 and 3 a.m., yeah, they don't live to see the sunrise. The staff actually calls it the devil's hour. On duty tonight, we have 27-year-old Dr. Arov, who's fresh to the night shift, and a 25-year-old intern named Neha. The whole place is just deadly quiet, except for the hum of the machines and that relentless storm outside. And then, the clock strikes exactly 2:17 a.m., right smack in the middle of this curse window. Without any warning whatsoever, the power just completely cuts out across the entire floor. Bam! Pitch black. Well, except for this eerie red glow from the emergency lights. And out of those shadows, a desperate grandmother bursts into the ward. She's carrying a tiny 4-day-old baby in her arms. She's screaming for help, just completely out of her mind with panic, and the baby's helpless father is trailing right behind her. Now, this scene here is pure chaos. And it's really fueled by a clash of these terrifying extremes. On one hand, you've got the grandmother sobbing hysterically, right? She's absolutely convinced the child is under some demonic curse. She keeps insisting an evil spirit took hold of the baby because it's Amavasya, the night of the new moon. But as Dr. Arov takes the child, he is hit with this horrifying physical reality. The infant is unnaturally stiff. I mean, almost like wood. The baby isn't crying, isn't breathing, and the skin. The skin has turned this terrifying shade of blue-black. It literally looks as if every single ounce of oxygen has just been violently sucked out of this little body. So they hook the baby up to the machine, and the crucial thing to note here is the terrifyingly low oxygen saturation number that flashes on the monitor, 63%. Dr. Arov immediately yells to maximize the oxygen flow. The mask goes on, the oxygen is pumping at full blast, but that number on the screen, it just stares back at them, 63, 63, 63. It refuses to budge. It's almost as if the machine itself has just thrown its hands up and given up. Intern Neha is standing there, her hands are physically shaking, and she's whispering in total terror that the baby just isn't responding. Okay, so Dr. Arov realizes he desperately needs to figure out what is happening internally. He goes to draw a blood sample. And you guys, this is where the nightmare really deepens. As he pulls back the plunger of the syringe, the blood filling the tube, it isn't red. It is deep, pitch black. It's unusually thick and sticky, honestly resembling dark chocolate syrup. It startles Neha so badly that she actually drops the test tube. But the crazy thing? The blood doesn't even spread on the floor. It just sits there, clumping together like it's something alive. And it starts emitting this incredibly strange, metallic scent that just fills the whole room. Suddenly, Dr. Arov's mind just races right past all that talk of evil spirits and curses. A memory flashes back to him, a slide from an old medical school lecture. Chocolate-colored blood means methemoglobinemia. It clicks. He realizes immediately that the baby's blood actually still has oxygen in it, but the blood cells have been altered so severely that they can't carry or distribute that oxygen to the body anymore. So this isn't a demon, not at all. This is poisoning. He whips around to the grandmother and demands to know exactly what she gave the child. And here's the kicker. The grandmother confesses that in order to ward off the evil eye, she had given the baby water from an old well mixed with ash. Well, guess what? That well water was heavily contaminated with nitrates. The grandmother's desperate, superstitious remedy to protect the child from a ghost was actually the very poison shutting down the baby's organs. The dark magic she feared was, in reality, a deadly, perfectly scientifically explainable chemical reaction. But look, knowing the diagnosis is only half the battle. And the deeply creepy atmosphere in that ward, yeah, it definitely hasn't faded. Standing quietly out in the corridor, there's a night nurse named Kamla, just watching this whole frantic scene unfold. And with this cold, incredibly flat voice that would send chills down anyone's spine, she just utters a single sentence. Death cannot be stopped, doctor. She speaks with this calm, terrifying certainty. Honestly, it's almost as if she's watched this exact tragedy play out before and already knows the dark ending. So Dr. Arov knows the exact antidote they need, methylene blue, but he immediately hits this massive wall of seemingly impossible obstacles. First, the medicine is locked away inside the hospital storeroom. Second, the ward boy stubbornly refuses to open it, citing the strict, unbending hospital rule that the room absolutely cannot be unlocked until morning. And third, when they finally talk about what's actually inside, they realize the only bottle of methylene blue available expired 15 days ago. So they are in a literal race against the clock, fighting not just a deadly chemical poison, but the cold, rigid bureaucracy of the hospital itself. Dr. Arov, though, he doesn't even hesitate. He grabs a heavy fire extinguisher right off the wall and, with absolutely all his might, just smashes the lock right off the storeroom door. He digs through the dusty, dark room and finds the expired methylene blue. Now Neha is terrified. She's warning him about the massive risk of injecting an expired drug into a newborn. But Arov's logic is simple and totally unyielding. If they don't try it, they lose the baby right now. Period. He makes the call to choose humanity over the hospital's rigid rules. He hands the syringe to Neha. The tension in that room is suffocating as the medicine enters the tiny baby's veins. Minute 1 passes. The monitor's beeping slows down. The heart is really struggling. Minute 2. The baby's chest barely rises as the breathing becomes agonizingly shallow. Minute 3. The numbers on the screen just start plummeting. 40, 38, 35. The room falls into this dead, heavy silence. The only sounds are the pouring rain outside and the terrifyingly slow beep of that fading monitor. And all the while, Nurse Kamla is just watching from the doorway with this really mysterious smile. And then it happens. A miracle. The numbers on the screen suddenly just halt their descent. 40, then 50, 70, 85, 95. The monitor's beat becomes rapid and strong again. This healthy pink color flushes right back into the baby's cheeks. And suddenly a loud, piercing, healthy cry absolutely shatters the silence of the ICU. Relief just floods the room. Intern Neha literally collapses in tears. And Dr. Arov takes this massive, shaky deep breath as the morning light finally begins to break through the hospital windows. They actually did it. All right, let's fast forward a bit to 5 a.m. The storm is past, Neha is exhausted, but obviously super relieved. She turns to the ward boy who's just arrived with some files for the morning, and she casually asks him, "Hey, where did Nurse Kamla go? She was standing at the door all night." The ward boy looks up at her, just completely confused, and says, "Which Kamla?" Neha frowns, right? She insists that she was the night nurse they were literally just talking to. The ward boy's face instantly drains of all color. The file he's holding just slips right out of his hands and hits the floor. With a trembling voice, he looks at Neha and whispers this incredibly chilling truth. "Madam, there is no night nurse named Kamla here. Sister Kamala died 2 years ago, right here in this very NICU." Okay, so to really understand this, we have to look back at the timeline from exactly 2 years ago, the very night this curse began. It was a stormy night, just like the one they just survived. A baby was brought in with the exact same condition. But the senior doctor on duty at the time, Dr. Raghav, he was arrogant. He was strictly bound by the rules. The storeroom key was sitting right in his pocket, and he point-blank refused to let Nurse Kamala open it until morning. At 3:11 a.m., the baby's heart stopped. At 3:12 a.m., completely devastated by this totally preventable tragedy, Nurse Kamla suffered a massive heart attack and died right there on the floor. And at 3:27 a.m., the stubborn Dr. Raghav died in a brutal car crash on his drive home. 3 deaths in one night. The birth of the devil's hour. And you know, this contrast perfectly highlights why the haunting started in the first place and why it finally ended. You have Dr. Raghav, who clung to these bureaucratic, rigid rules. He lacked the empathy to just act, which directly resulted in 3 senseless deaths and tethered a grief-stricken spirit to that ward. Then you have Dr. Arov. He was faced with the exact same choice at the exact same hour, but he shattered those rules. He smashed a lock. He risked his own career. He saved a child's life. And in doing so, he finally put the restless spirit of Nurse Kamla to peace. Because after this night, no one ever died in Ward No. 9 during the Devil's Hour again. Which really brings us to the core lesson of today's explainer, doesn't it? It leaves us with this pretty profound question to ponder. What truly holds the most power when we are faced with our darkest, most impossible hours? Is it the rigid, unbending rules we put in place? Or is it our capacity for basic human empathy and courage? Because sometimes breaking a rule is literally the only way to break a curse. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I really hope it leaves you thinking about the choices we make when absolutely everything is on the line. See you next time.